Hello, everyone. All right. Volume. Apologies. All right. Hope everybody is doing well today. Just having a technical difficulty here. Okay. Hopefully everybody can hear us now. So sorry about that. I don't know what is going on with the microphone. Okay. Hopefully everybody can hear us now. Welcome, everyone. Today in our live stream, we are going to be showing you how to make car freshies. So these are made using our aroma beads. As you can see, these are all individual little plastic beads. And all you have to do to make these is add some fragrance oil as well as some candle dye, some liquid candle dye. So we're going to go walk you through the steps on how to do that. It's really easy. This is a super fun thing to do, you know, just as a DIY, or if you're looking for a really interesting product to add to your product lineup. These are really popular and have been really, really fun to make, at least for us. So let's see, do we have? All right, perfect. Okay. So I'm going to show you here. This is what, can we switch to the camera? Sorry, just one second. Okay. Sorry, guys. I don't know what is happening today. There we go. Okay. So in this little plastic tub here, I have my pre-made aroma beads, and I'm going to walk you through the steps on how to make these. But as you can see, these are just the little bitty plastic beads, and I have added our liquid candle dye and fragrance oil to them. And then we're going to use a cookie cutter, which this is our mason jar shape, and we're going to bake them in the oven to get one of these. So let me show you first how to add the fragrance and the dye to your aroma beads. So what you're going to need first is some sort of a container to hold the beads and hold everything else. You want to make sure whatever type of container that you're using, that it is going to be resistant to some of the fragrance oils that can be more caustic and eat through certain types of plastic, but also something that is not going to kind of suck the fragrance out of your beads. Ziploc bags, for example, have been known to do that. So there's certain types of plastic that are really not going to be recommended for this. I do have some customers who prefer to use a glass container, which is also fine. Just make sure whatever kind of cover you're using is also going to be resistant to the fragrance oils. One trick that I've learned to find the right type of plastic to use for these, on the bottom of our fragrance oils, even, you can see, I'm not sure how well it'll show up on camera, but you can see some little symbols on here. This one right here is a little triangle with the number 1 in it. So if I look at the bottom of my plastic container here, again, I'm not sure how well it's going to show up on camera, but this little triangle right here, this one actually has a number 5 in it. But I know that a number 5 or a number 1 plastic will work for this. There we go. Okay, so now we're just going to need a scale because we're going to have to measure out our aroma beads. And this is what they look like before you add any fragrance oil or any dye to them. They're just these kind of translucent white beads. See if I can get some in my hand. And then you'll notice whenever you use these that they have a slight vinegar odor to them. That's perfectly normal. From my understanding, it's some sort of a coating on the plastic that actually helps the beads absorb the fragrance oil better. So that is something that is very normal. If you are concerned about how strong the vinegar scent is, you can let your beads air out for maybe a week or so. But in my personal experience, I have not had any issue with the vinegar scent affecting the outcome of my aroma beads. So what I actually like to do first is measure out my fragrance oil and my dye. And the reason that I do that is it allows the fragrance, or I'm sorry, the dye to mix a little bit easier in the beads versus adding the drops after I've already mixed in the fragrance oil and everything. It just disperses it a little bit more evenly. So I like to pre-mix the fragrance oil and the dye before I add the beads. So I've got my scale here, and I'm going to do just a 1-to-1 ratio. Do we have any questions yet?
Looks like Holiday Gifts LLC asked reuse old pickle jar or condiment glass jar.
Yeah, you could use reuse an old condiment jar. You want to make sure that you thoroughly clean it out and everything. But those types of containers should have like a plastisol liner, which a lot of our metal twist lids have a plastisol liner, so it should be relatively sturdy against the fragrance oils. It may just depend on the fragrance, but I know I have quite a few customers that have mixed them in like mason jars with regular lids and things like that. So that shouldn't be an issue. Do we have any other questions really quick?
No.
Okay. Guys, if you have any questions at all, please go ahead and post them in the comments, and we will try to get to them, as we go through the video, but we will also have a Q&A session towards the end. So today, let me show you the fragrance. This is actually from our fall fairy tale collection. This is Whispering Woods. It's a very nice piney and fruity type of scent, and it's great for both fall and winter, in my opinion. So I'm going to do a 1-to-1 ratio. So I guess it's not really 1-to-1, but I'm going to do a pound of beads to 1 ounce of fragrance oil. Now, our aroma beads, you can do up to 1 to 2 ounces of fragrance per pound of beads. However, keep in mind certain fragrances that are a little bit more dense. Let's say leather, for example. You're not going to want to add 2 ounces of fragrance oil to 1 pound of the beads. Because that scent is so incredibly dense, it will just not ever absorb the beads. When we first started carrying the beads, that was one of the concerns, specifically with leather, because it's just so dense and it just does not want to hold that much fragrance oil for some reason. So you'll kind of have to gauge it. It may be a little bit of trial and error, but I would say if your fragrance oil is a little bit more of a syrupy or like a watered down syrupy type of density texture, use less of the fragrance oil. Chances are that fragrance is also going to be very strong and heavy already, like the leather. So you probably won't even need to use that much fragrance. So I've got my 1 ounce of the Whispering Woods, and I'm going to do 3 drops. This is our teal aqua liquid dye. Let me get a little bit more in the dropper. And I'll do 4 just because the first 2 drops weren't really full drops. So now all I'm going to do, you can see the dye kind of swirling in there, and that's really all I'm going to do is just kind of swirl it around a little bit, mix up that fragrance oil and the dye, and just make sure it's all fully incorporated.
Horse Girl 1H asks, how do we know which ones are more dense?
Typically, your like baked good types of fragrances, anything that's really heavy and sweet, like blueberry cobbler, creamy vanilla, birthday cake, buttercream, those types of fragrances are going to be on the more dense side. You can also, a lot of times, a telling sign that a fragrance may be more dense is if it has a lot of vanillin. So on our website, if you're looking at the fragrance oils, you'll see the little icons at the bottom of the picture, and it'll have a little vanilla flower with a percentage. So if your vanillin content is maybe 3% or higher, it may be a little bit more of a more dense fragrance. Okay, so now that I've got my 1 ounce of fragrance oil and my dye added, I'm going to go ahead and add 16 ounces of my aroma beads to the container. I got beads kind of going everywhere. Now this bag that I'm using, and it's not going to be a full 16 ounces because I spilled some of the beads out. This bag that I'm using, this small bag here, is the 1 pound unit of measure. We sell the 1 pound, which is like the sample size, but we also sell them in a 10-pound bag, and then the case is a 45-pound case. So if you're looking to just kind of test them out before you purchase like the large bulk sizes, the 1 pound or the 10-pound bag is definitely going to be the way to go. We have any other questions or anything yet?
No, no more.
All right. So now you can see all the fragrance oil, all the dye and everything is at the bottom. So we are going to make sure that this lid is on really, really well. I have had the lids pop open on me before. So make sure that your lid is pressed down really well. And even then, when I shake these, I like to hold the lid down. So now all I'm going to do is just shake it up. You can already see the fragrance and the dye evenly getting dispersed. And you're gonna have to shake this a few times over probably a few days. Again, depending on the density of your fragrance, that's going to determine essentially how long it's going to take to absorb the beads. The amount of beads that you're scenting all at once is also going to determine the absorption time.
Holiday Gifts LLC also asks, how thick should the bead layer be for it not to warp in a car in the Texas heat?
Ooh, that's a good question, especially in the hotter climates. I have not personally had any issues. Like this one is probably like 3/4 to an inch thick, which is roughly the same thickness of my cookie cutter. I would say as long as they're about an inch thick like this, I wouldn't expect there to be an issue. I have had some instances where, so the hole that's right here where we've threaded our little piece of jute, if you get your hole too close to the edge, that's going to allow these beads to kind of melt, which will make the string or whatever you're using kind of pull through and split the beads apart. So you'll want to make sure if you're putting a hole in your freshies that you make it about a half an inch away from like any sort of edge, just so it doesn't tear.
Yeah.
Kind of like an earring going through your earlobe or something. You just want to make sure that you've left yourself enough space that if it is going to get hot and it is going to warp just a little bit, that it's not going to tear it all the way through. Hopefully that answers your question. Oh, I've got jute on me now. Okay. Let me shake these up just a little bit more.
Bella B66 said, I see you're doing 16-1, and everyone says, like, for instance, 8-2. Do you think the candles that more fragrance oil is not better? Oh, so she's asking, like, if she does an 8-2, if, like, similar to the candles, if adding more fragrance is better or not.
Well, again, it depends. If even some of the lighter fragrances, if you're overloading the amount of fragrance, it may not ever absorb into the beads. The manufacturer of the aroma beads recommends the 1 to 2 ounce per pound ratio. So that's what we have always recommended. I have not personally tried going beyond that, but I haven't really had any issues as long as I'm sticking within that ratio and taking it into account more dense fragrances. Hope that answers your question. So more is not always the best, just like it is with candles. You know, if you add too much fragrance oil to your wax, it can actually start to separate, which can become a fire hazard. You're not necessarily going to get the same sort of risks making the aroma beads, but it may just never absorb into your beads, and you might have to just end up adding more beads, more dye, to get that fragrance oil to absorb. Now, let me pop these open really quick just to kind of show you. So you can see, like in these areas here, there's still some dye and everything that hasn't fully dispersed, but that's okay. I'm gonna have to, let these really cure for a few days. I might even, because it's not as dark as my other beads that I've had pre-made, I probably would go back and add a few more drops. Um, but these are essentially gonna have to sit just until they're fully absorbed. But we really wanted to show you the process start to finish. So that is step one of adding your fragrance oil and your dye to your beads. So what I'll do is over time, this lid doesn't want to go back on. Over time, I will just come in and shake them a few times just to make sure that I'm fully, dispersing the fragrance oil and the dye to the beads. It also has helped with absorption if you're just kind of mixing it up, because if all the fragrance is sitting at the bottom of the container, it's not going to be able to reach the other beads that need to absorb the fragrance. So shaking it up a couple of times a day, like usually if I'm walking through the lab here or something, if I see them sitting on the counter, I'll give them a quick shake and then just keep going through my day. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time. And it depends on, how many fragrances you have and how many, the amount of beads that you're trying to do at once. But for the most part, I would say the majority of the fragrances that I use within a week, they're fully absorbed. However, we do also recommend letting your beads, once they're done absorbing the fragrance oil completely, letting them cure for about another week. Again, just to make sure that you're allowing the fragrance to completely disperse in the beads. Okay, so we're going to set those to the side and we're going to work on the next step here. So I have my little cookie sheet, parchment paper. You want to use parchment paper as opposed to wax paper. First time I ever tried this, when we first started testing with the beads, I used wax paper and my beads melted to the wax paper and I wasn't able to get them off and they ended up being ruined. So I highly recommend parchment paper. I have had some people just use their metal cookie sheets as well and use a silicone spray on the cookie sheet. But I have found that for me at least, parchment paper tends to work the best. So I'm going to use this is our mason jar cookie cutter. And then this is our cute butterfly cookie cutter. We have another question?
Yes. Candles con Amor asks, could I spread the beads and fragrance to add multiple colors?
Absolutely. We actually have a tutorial on our YouTube channel, and I think it's on our website as well, where we did, I think this is what you're asking, where we did like multiple colors in one freshie. It was a little fish cookie cutter, and I colored it to look like a trout. So it had like a salmon pink belly, and then the middle was kind of like a a white color, and then the top was our green, our bayberry eucalyptus liquid dye. So you can use multiple colors in one freshie.
Or even same fragrance, multiple colors for different shapes.
Sure, yeah. There's plenty of people that'll do that, especially if you're selling these and your clientele, likes one fragrance, but maybe you want to offer different shapes. Absolutely. That works perfectly fine. Okay. So now that I've got my cookie cutters laid out, I'm going to open up my pre-made beads here, and I'm going to start pouring them in here. So what I like to do is just kind of get some of those in there. You can see it's obviously mounded up in the middle a little bit. And I'll just take my fingers and kind of evenly disperse. Do you have any other questions?
Being busy, amazing. Asks, are you making molds with hard eyes?
Making molds?
Yeah, hard eyes. She made.
Are we making? So we are not making any molds. We do have our cookie cutters, which the majority of our cookie cutters are on sale, 50% off. I don't know if any of you have checked out our big sale that we have going on, but we do have, I think the majority of our cookie cutters are on sale 50% off right now, including, well, I don't think these two guys are included. I think those are the ones that we're keeping, but we're discontinuing a bunch of our cookie cutters.
The sunflower.
Yeah, the sunflower, that we have a Texas, we have a fish, we have a little awareness ribbon, we have a unicorn head,
We have a
llamas.
Halloween.
Yeah, there's some Halloween ones, that kind of thing. Whoop. And if you get any extra beads like that fall out, just kind of pick them back up and put them in there. You can leave them out, but they're going to melt kind of into big blobs if you leave them out of the molds.
It smells so good in here.
I know, I love this scent. Some of these shapes can be a little bit trickier to fill in those little gaps, like this little kind of tail on the, I guess it would be the body of the butterfly. You'll just want to kind of push the beads in there. I've used like a little wooden coffee stirrer stick before, and that just helps kind of get it into the little nooks and crannies of everything. One other thing I didn't mention, just because we're not using that particular type of oven today, is before you start, getting to this point where you're putting your beads into the cookie cutters or whatever your molds are, go ahead and preheat your oven. Temperature can kind of vary. I have personally found that around 300 to maybe 350 is the ideal temperature depending on your oven. Everybody's oven is a little bit different. And also the size of your freshies that you're going to be making and the amount of freshies that you're making all at once. Those okay. So I think we're pretty good here. As you can see, let me try to lift it up a little bit. I've gotten the beads pretty much filled all the way to the top of my cookie cutters. Again, these are about an inch thick, which I have not personally had any issues with the beads splitting in extra heat or anything. Now at this step, if you don't want to drill a hole after you've baked the beads, what you can do is take a nail or a screw or something, and you can put it wherever you want your hole placed for your string. I personally prefer to drill a hole in them afterwards. Just makes it a little bit cleaner. And that way I can make sure that the hole is exactly where I want it to be. So these guys, I'm going to go ahead and put into the oven. I'm going to put them in there at about 325, and we're going to go for 5 minutes, and we're going to take y'all's questions.
Chocolate Couture Co. asks, can we bake different scents at once?
Trying to remember if I've done that before. Can you switch the camera? I believe you can. I would say there is a possibility that you may get some contaminations from other fragrances if you've got them mixed. So I would think that it would be better to try to do one fragrance at a time. I understand if you're making these from home or in a smaller toaster oven or something like that, it might be a little bit more difficult to do that. But I think you'd probably be safer in the long run. But maybe if anybody else has done that before, if you want to mention that in the comments, um, you can certainly do that. But I personally would recommend doing one fragrance at a time just to make sure that it doesn't cause any contamination from other scents. It's just on a delay. What other questions do we have, guys? It's going to take about, I'm going to let those bake for about 5 minutes or so. Again, depending on the number of beads that you're doing or the number of freshies that you're doing at once and the size of your freshies, that's going to kind of determine your bake time. I'm going to start these out at about 5-6 minutes, and then I'll pull them out and I'll show you how I like to test for them. Everybody has, a slightly different process for this. But I personally have found that this particular method works really well for me. And all I really do is just take the tip of my finger and kind of tap the middle, and I will show y'all this before I actually do it. But I'll take the tip of my finger and tap the middle of the freshie, the beads. And typically, if they're still sticking to my finger and I can see the beads are kind of coming up and separating from the ones in the middle, I know that they need more bake time. But if it's not sticking to my finger and the beads are not pulling up, then they should be good. And you will want to make sure that you completely cool your beads before you pop them out of the molds.
Debbie Dawes asked, how long did you say to bake them for?
Again, it's going to depend on the number of beads that you're doing or the number of freshies that you're doing, as well as the size of your freshies. For the two that I'm starting out today, I'm just doing about 5 to 6 minutes, but I've done probably as many as like 6 or 7 on one big cookie sheet and baked them probably for about 10 or 12 minutes. The thickness of your beads is also going to determine your bake time. Let's see what else. Yeah. Yeah, no problem. I see, what is it? Cage. Is it chocolate?
Chocolate couture.
Ah, yes, I see that. Yes, I have, again, I've not personally mixed fragrances in the oven before, whenever I bake my beads, but I'm pretty sure I've heard some customers try that and had a similar outcome. So I would certainly recommend one fragrance at a time.
Go in batches.
Yeah, go make them in batches. Okay, so while we're on the Freshie or not category, subject, if you are local to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which I know a lot of you are, October 5th, we are going to be at the Plano Event Center, I believe, for Freshie Fest 2024. We went last year and it was fantastic. We got to meet with so many different freshie makers and everything. And it was really great. So we will have a booth there this year. We are going to be raffling off 4 of our freshie kits, I believe, as well as some fragrance sample packs. So there are some really fun prizes. And if you went last year, we will have some fragrance oils this year with us to sell. So we'll have some of our top selling sample packs for fragrances, and then we'll bring some of those scents with us as well in the 16-ounce bottles. But again, that's going to be in Plano on October 5th, and it's from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So if you're local and you don't have anything to do that day, you guys should totally come out and see it. There's a lot of really cool freshie makers there. They do classes. If you want to sign up for those, you can go to their website, and it's just freshiefest.com. And it was really great last year. We had a really great experience. Again, we got to connect with a bunch of freshie makers and everything. And there was a lot of new people that we hadn't met that had, wanted to talk to us or wanted to try our products before. So it was a really great event. And so that's why we're going back this year, and we're really excited about it. So definitely come out and see us. Do we have another question?
Dirty Damsel Candle Co. asks, how does the fragrance last time differ from using beads versus other car freshener bases like felt? Do you find that these beads last much longer?
I personally have not made any car fresheners with felt before. So I really can't speak to that. I will say the Freshies that I have made, it depends a little bit on the time of year. I would say hotter months, especially like a hotter climate here in Texas. Once my beads, are in once my freshie is in my car and everything, it typically will last for about 4 weeks or so. Where I can actually smell it getting into the car. It might still have a fragrance to it, but it may not be filling the entire car with the scent. And I want to say that's pretty common. I think for the most part, like in the cooler months, you might see them last anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. Again, there's a lot of different factors. The strength of the fragrance that you're using. So if it's like a really heavy, strong scent, you're probably going to smell that a lot longer than you would something that's a little bit more soft and subtle. So if you want your fragrances to last and be really strong for longer, strongly recommend, going with the heavier scents. But also some people don't like those heavy scents. They prefer a softer fragrance. So I would say just, anywhere from maybe 4 to 8 weeks, depending on your climate and the season and everything.
Oh no, any more questions?
No questions right now? Let's see. What else can I talk about as far as tips and tricks go? If you're mass producing your beads, I have seen quite a few people use like plastic Rubbermaid tubs to put their beads in. So like those big plastic containers. Again, you just want to make sure that it's a plastic that's going to be resistant to the fragrance oils and also not suck the fragrance out of your beads. But yeah, mass production, that works pretty well. I do see people use like big giant glass containers. I would say airtight or as close to airtight as possible is best. Just because you don't want, any fragrance kind of dissipating out of your container, whatever you've got them in. Um, but yeah, it really just comes down to what your needs are and personal preference. I've seen people put, several pounds into like a plastic, it would be like for like a plastic sugar canister or something like that. Maybe something that's a little bit easier to move around, easier to shake up, because obviously a big plastic tub, you're going to have to stir them versus shaking them. Um, That's important. Oh, I don't know if I showed you really our liquid dyes. So all of our liquid candle dyes, which this is again the teal aqua that I'm using today, all of our liquid candle dyes like this can be used to color the aroma beads. I would say the only one that is a little bit tricky, can you switch the camera again, is the hot pink. The hot pink is kind of the weirdest candle dye that we have. Oh, they're ready. They are the for some reason the hot pink is just really sensitive to temperature. So if it's super hot outside, a lot of times it tends to turn them. This is one that's kind of been in the sun. This was hot pink at one point. I don't know if you can even see the like pink tinge to it, but this one that has been exposed to light for a long time, the hot pink just for some reason in the Freshies doesn't last super long. Now you can use uh, the UV powder to help with that. You got it. You can use our UV stabilizer powder to help with that. Again, you're going to want to mix it in with your fragrance oil before you add it to your beads. Because that is a powder, it's going to need to mix with that. I unfortunately, when I made this one, I did not add the UV stabilizer, so that's the main reason that the pink faded so much. But I will say the pink is probably the trickiest one of them all, especially to use for Freshies. It just tends to fade really quickly for some reason. It's just kind of a weird fragrance.
She's so cute.
Okay, let me get the.
Yeah, it's very hot.
It's very hot. Okay, so now that we've got our beads pulled out of the oven, let me get my hand in.
It was perfect. Nothing was coming off.
Okay, so let me pull this up here just so you can see. But I'm just going to take the very tip of my finger and kind of touch them. It's kind of hard to see from the angle that you're at, but the Honestly, they are kind of coming up just a little bit right there. I don't know if you can see kind of how they're coming up, but I'm going to pop these into the oven just a couple more minutes. Just a couple more minutes just to make sure those are fully melted in the middle, because if they're not melted together, at least to where they're touching in the middle, then it's going to kind of fall apart. I've had that happen where essentially the outside of the freshie was baked properly, but then in the middle here it started to separate and it just kind of all pulled apart. Essentially, you want to get it to where, if you can see the back here, it's kind of smooth. You want to get it to where it's, just a little bit smooth on the back to where the beads are holding together, but it's also melted enough so that this whole part is sticking together. So just a couple more minutes, I think, and those will be ready. And then it usually takes a few minutes for them to cool. I will say, popping them out of the cookie cutters can sometimes be a little bit challenging. The cookie cutters are pretty flexible, though. I would say the majority of them, you'll have to kind of wiggle it back and forth a little bit to get them to pop out. But if you kind of misshape your cookie cutters or anything like that, doing that, which I have done before, just trying to get them to pop out, you can put them right back together. In fact, the mason jar that we're using today was one that I had used previously where it had kind of gotten stuck, and I just had to kind of reshape it and everything. But yeah, we're just gonna wait a couple more minutes. If we have any other questions, guys, go ahead and put those in the comments. I'd love to answer as many questions as possible. I know this is still a relatively new product out on the market. We have seen, it grow over the years. Again, the Freshies they're super easy to make. A lot of people really like them. I know, especially like here in Texas, I see them in little boutique stores and everything all the time. I live in a little small town, so the little boutique stores on the square have car Freshies, so I see them all the time. They're just really fun to make. I mean, it's a great craft to do even with your kids. If you want to do that with them to help make gifts for teachers or friends or whatever, because you can put them, they're not just for cars, you can put them in a bedroom. In a class, I've seen teachers put them in their classroom before. You also don't have to bake the beads if you don't want to. You can get little organza sachet bags and put them in the little sachet bags if you want to do that. I do not recommend putting them in a sachet bag in a drawer with like clothes. We had an instance before where somebody did that and they ended up messing up some of their clothes. So I don't recommend necessarily using it for that particular type of application, but it does work really well. Um,
Just like hanging
in any kind of room. Yeah, hang it up by your desk. We have one of our employees here, he has a little fish that I was telling you about earlier that I made. He keeps that on his desk just because he likes it, and it smells like I think either gunpowder or desperado. So it's a very manly fish freshie. Let me check on these really quick. Okay, let's see where these guys are. Let's try it on this camera just so we can do like a side angle. So I'm going to touch this one. See how it's still kind of sticking to my finger just a little bit there in the middle? That's what I don't want. This one is a little bit better, but this guy is still kind of coming up. So a couple more minutes, I think.
Debbie Dawes asks, how much do the kits range from?
The starter kits should all essentially be the same price. Can you pull them up? I don't know that off the top of my head. I will tell you what comes in the kit. So in the starter kit, you're going to get 5 pounds of aroma beads, so 5 1-pound bags. You'll also get 5 different fragrances. And our Freshie kits are seasonal, so there's a fall, winter, spring, summer for you to choose from. And then you'll also get 5 cookie cutter shapes that should go along with whatever the season it is. Are they all the same price?
Yeah, they're all under $60.
What's the
$59.99.
So they're $59.99 for the starter kits. And again, because the cookie cutter shapes and everything are different, they all yield slightly different amount of freshies that you can make. But I think for the most part they make, does
You
it
can,
say
I
on
think
there?
it says you can make about 30 freshies with
Yeah.
the five
So
colors.
everything that's in the kit, essentially, it's enough to make about 30 freshies.
Yeah.
So yeah, so five 1 ounce fragrances, 5 1 pound bags of the aroma beads, 5 different cookie cutter shapes to go with whatever the season is. And then we have 3 of the liquid dyes. We have the red dark pink, the blue sky blue, and the yellow lemon liquid dyes. We did primary colors, so you can mix your own colors to make pretty much whatever you need. But again, any of our liquid dyes can be used to color the freshies. So if you needed to purchase other colors, like if you wanted the teal or something like that I'm using, you can certainly do that. Any of them will work. That's just what comes in the kit. I'm going to give that just another minute or so, and then we'll go check on them again. The Freshie kits, they're a really great gateway into making freshies if you want to sell them for your business. They also make really great gifts, especially with the holidays and everything coming up. Um, Freshie kits are a really great fun. Like if you have anybody in your life that likes making crafts, or maybe they've been interested in making freshies or something like that, the starter kits are really great.
Especially good for like a teenage girl or
Yeah.
a teenage boy who wants to like start their own business or
Mhm.
something fun to do with their friends, like a girls' night or something.
Yeah, we have people that do fundraisers. So if they're trying to raise funds for maybe their sports team, or their band, or whatever club at school or something like that. There you go. She's got nieces, so it's a great way to do some fundraising for those types of clubs or teams or whatever you have. But again, it's fun to just make them yourself, make them with your kids, make them with your friends. Um, Make them to sell if you want to, but just a fun little thing to do. All right, I'm gonna check these guys again.
While she's grabbing those, I will say there are some people that paint those and like make different I don't know, different funny faces and stuff like that on there. So doesn't just have to be plain, plain Jane with just a dye that you can paint them, design them.
Oh
Some
yeah,
people do like actual like labels like out of cardstock and like glue them on there. So there's a lot of different ways you can make these.
the round cookie cutter and also the t-shirt. I've seen those get turned into a bunch of different things. Like the round, I've seen those turned into baseballs, softballs, different symbols. Maybe you're a firefighter, policeman, something like that. You can paint on them with, I believe, acrylic paint, but like she said, I've also seen people glue like cardstock. Maybe they've had something special printed. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with them. I've seen people hang charms from them. Little fringe.
Yeah,
You can also when they're still melted like this, you can dust them with a little bit of glitter if you want a little sparkle or anything. Um, I've done that before. I've also we have a tutorial on our YouTube channel, which these are good to go. You see how those are not sticking to my finger anymore? These are perfect now. So I'm actually going to take them off of the uh, cookie sheet here.
So we have another really good question for multicolored ones. Do you pour them in cookie cutters together or and then bake them? That is asked by the sky is fake.
Hmm. So you could, I was actually thinking about this earlier. I have seen where people will just like, after they've gotten the beads, mixed up, they might take their beads and kind of mix them up to make them multicolored. But I've also seen people uh do them in like layers. We have a really good tutorial for this on our YouTube channel. It's the how to make a fish freshie. Like I was saying before, and maybe you weren't here before, but it was 3 colors for a little fish. I was trying to make it look like a trout. So what I essentially did is I had cardstock, and I trimmed it to like the proper length and everything. And I put that in where I wanted my first color to go. And I kind of poured the beads in. And then because I was doing 3 colors, I actually had to have 2 pieces of cardstock. So then I did the same thing, leaving the cardstock in there with the color in the middle, poured that in, and then still left the cardstock in there and did my third color. And then I pulled those out and it made like a perfectly striped little trout fish. There's a few different methods you can do. That's the one that I have personally found that works best for me.
I've never tried it. I've always either done like just regular. So, but that was a lot of work. That was hard work and time, but it was so pretty.
It ended, yeah, they turned out really well. You might go grab it from Ryan, see if he has it. I can show you the multicolored fish that I did, but I have not personally mixed like two colors together or multiple colors together, but I have seen multicolored freshies where, maybe it's all one freshie, but there's like two or three colors kind of blended together. But I've also seen people do like an ombre if you wanted to, or something like that. Oh, she found it. Yay.
He said he can't have it, so we gotta bring it.
Yeah, he's gonna want it back because he likes it. But this is my little, and I even put a little bobber on it. But see how, let me get it closer. See how it's green, and then I made like a salmon color, and then the bottom here was just kind of like a white. And I just, everywhere where you see those layers kind of melted together, that's where I put my cardstock. And what's cool about it is when it all melted, they just kind of all blended together. But then we use this cute little bobber just to kind of make it fun. Looks like a little fish. Like, like I just caught it.
That's so cute.
But yeah, these are some of my favorite freshies that I made. These guys turned out really, really cute. But yeah, you can certainly get really creative with it. Mix your colors. This is a little bit of an ombre. Obviously, they're all different colors, not the same shades or anything like that. But yeah, you can get creative with it, guys. There's so many things that you can do with these little aroma beads. We gotta make sure we give that back to Ryan, but I'm gonna put it right there. So these guys are just gonna be cooling. I don't know that I'll get to unmold them on camera just because they're gonna have to cool. But essentially, that's it. I would just, let me show you here. They're a little bit warm, but you can see how, whoop, right there. They've just melted together enough on the back. Grab this guy. They almost look wet whenever they're still hot. They're almost sparkly and fun, but yeah, so these, you'll want to let them cool completely before you try to unmold them. If you try to unmold them before they're cool, they can fall apart because I've made that mistake before. Whenever I was first doing that, I just got a little bit impatient. What I have found when you're pulling these out of the cookie cutters, like for a shape like this, yeah, just kind of pull on them and just kind of, you'll hear it release a little bit as you're going, and just keep kind of working it like that until they pop out. Shapes, I would say, like the mason jar, are going to be a little bit easier to pop out just because it doesn't have as many like little nooks and crannies like the butterfly does. But yeah, you'll just kind of work it out. And I can also wait until these are cool and post a video of me unmolding them if you guys would like. Just let us know in the comments if you want to see that, and we can certainly do it. But essentially, once you unmold them, what I would do, like I said, I don't personally like to use the nail technique whenever I'm baking them. I prefer to take a drill with a drill bit and just drill a hole through it, and then thread whatever string. I like to use jute. I think it's really popular to use something stretchy. So if you're going to put it in your car, you can stretch it around your rear view mirror. I have also had some people tell me that their elastic melted in the heat. So whatever you get, just make sure it's sturdy enough to withstand hot temperatures if you're in a warmer climate. Do we have any other questions or anything, Kat?
Everybody said that was so cute.
Awesome. Yeah, they're so fun to make. Like I said, it's great for kids, it's great for adults, it's great for whoever wants to do it. I mean, there's not anything that's super complicated about it. Just takes a little bit of time and patience, especially to mix your beads up, which I wanted to show you guys that full process. We have a few different tutorials on our website and on YouTube for this. We did a couple Christmases ago. We made one that looked like the Little Debbie's Christmas tree cakes. It turned out so cute. In that one, I did add like some glitter. I added some paint to it to like do the decorative icing. And I also dusted it with like a shimmery mica powder. We don't sell mica powders. I know you can use mica powders to color your aroma beads. I've heard mixed reviews about that. Some people have said certain colors can bleed. I've not personally had that issue with our candle dyes, though.
Miss Stevenette asked, "Oh wow! Oh no," she said, "Oh wow! Now I really want to."
It's really fun, guys.
Nick71 says these won't melt in the car heat.
They can. Earlier in the video, which you'll be able to go back and watch this if anybody joined late or anything like that. We'll have it posted on all platforms that we're streaming on. What I was talking about before is typically I don't have a problem with them melting in the heat. You want to make sure that they're thick enough. These are about 3/4 to an inch thick typically. The other problem that I have had people say, especially in hotter climates, wherever you put your hole, you want to just make sure that it's not too close to any of the edges, because as it gets hot, this plastic is going to kind of soften. And just with the weight of the freshie, if it's too hot and the hole is too close to the edge of it, it can pop out. So just make sure wherever you put the hole for your string or elastic or whatever, that it's maybe 3/4 of an inch or so from whatever edge of your freshie, just so that doesn't happen. Whenever I've done that, I've not personally had any issues with it coming out. Of course, there are, extreme conditions. Maybe you're in Arizona or Nevada or something like that. And I know I have a friend that lives there and things just melt very easily in the car. So I'm not going to say that it won't ever happen again, but I've had the best results whenever I've made sure that the hole isn't too close to the edge. Any other questions?
No other questions.
All right, guys. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed getting to see this demo. And like I said, this will be posted everywhere if you need to go back and watch any parts of it. If you have any other questions at all, you can go ahead and comment under the video as well, and we will be sure to answer any questions that come through. Thank you so much all for joining us, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.